I just want to say thank you to everyone who watches my YouTube channel. And if you don't think a Savannah monitor will play tug of war, you're wrong. Because they will. And they're actually really good at it. There we go. So if you guys like my videos, ooh, he's strong. Please go ahead and leave a like. That helps grow my channel. Also, please comment on my videos. I love interacting with you guys. It's a lot of fun and I get to answer questions and see that you guys care. And if you're not a member of the family, you can go ahead and subscribe. It's free. It helps me grow the channel even more. And I've listened to you guys, and I do have a Patreon down below. Oh, alligator death roll. So please go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, bell icon. Oh, everyone knows I try to avoid drama. And I did make a video a while back in a response to one of Go Herping's videos about how, savage Savannah monitors were. And, that video really could come off as an opinion piece from him. And, guys, I look at videos in two ways. Like, if you're stating an opinion, as I do sometimes in my videos, state that it's your opinion. And if it's your professional opinion based on experience, state that too. Because that's okay. Because maybe you've had that type of relationship where every monitor you've worked with has been bad. But if you've worked with one or worked with none, and then you're just stating that they're bad, you can't do that. But if you're stating your video as a factual video, and you don't state that it's just your opinion or your opinion based on experience, I have a problem with that. So there used to be a way in YouTube way back when where you used to be able to leave a video comment, and then YouTube realized holy crap, people will just go leave video comments on everyone. So they wiped that on big people's videos who get billions and billions of views. But I recently watched one of Lizardguru's videos, and I don't want this to be an attack towards her, and you guys don't even need to watch the video, but you're just talking about, in part of the video, in a recent video, she talks about UV lights, and the information's just wrong. And unfortunately, it's that wrong level of information that gets out there a lot. And there's people in the comments who are like, thank you for telling me this information, and that's where I have a problem, because that's where the disservice comes in, because then people are running with that information and they don't understand. And maybe she didn't understand. There was no testing. It was kind of just her sitting there and talking and saying what she did. I don't know if it was off her experience. I don't know if it's something she read on Google and then she's just saying it to you, but she was just saying stuff. So I have to do this rebuttal because and I'll go into the information she said, and I'm not gonna tear it apart. Like I said, I don't want to be attacked to her. She probably doesn't know. And I'm gonna show you the actual proof and what is correct and what's not correct and what type of light you should use in one. I made a Reptile Uvb video a while back saying Reptile Uvb made easy, and I said just get a UVB, get a solar meter. It'll read the amount of UV that's coming out. Like if I turn it on right now, it's going to read 0. There's no UVB light. There are some white LEDs on. And it will tell you where in the Ferguson zone it is. And then every single reptile, guys, you can look up where that reptile's natural habitat is and where that natural habitat falls inside the Ferguson zone. And then you know how much UVB light should be in your reptile. Now, I know this is the easiest way to do UVB. This is also expensive, 200 something bucks. So if you have one reptile, it's difficult. But this also does save money really quickly because those UV bulbs that they tell you to change every 6 months, I've had a UVB bulb running for almost 2 years. It's giving out a little less UVB, but it's still giving out UVB. I've also had some go bad within a month, and I knew they had to be replaced. So we're going to actually use this. We're going to give numbers. I apologize. This is probably going to be a longer video, and I really didn't want to do it, but I just have to do it right, so please watch the video. But we're going to talk about a few things in this video. We're going to talk about CFLs, compact fluorescent bulbs. We're going to talk about vapor bulbs, and we're going to talk about tube lighting. Both T5 high output, and T8 bulbs. But wait, guys, there's more, because I want this to be a super thorough video. We're going to talk about the different kinds of screen lids. So this one here is your tighter screen. It's like what you'd see on a chameleon cage, but you see it on the top of some tanks. And then we're going to talk about your wider metal grating. And then we're going to talk about no screen lid to simulate an inside the tank situation where you put your light inside the tank so there is no diffuse. We're also going to talk about domes. So this is a 8.5-inch deep dome. This is a 5.5-inch deep dome. And then wait, there's a double dome. And I've got tube enclosures. So I've done all this testing before, but never on video. And most people, guys, who have different enclosures, you guys know your tanks. If you've got an arboreal creature, maybe it's taller. So maybe your lights are higher up, or maybe you've got a terrestrial creature, so it's, you know, wider and it's not as tall, so your bulbs are sitting at different distances. They're being diffused by different things. Let's break it down for you, but I want to tackle some of the main things that she said. That way we can counter it with evidence and show you guys and get you the right info. Yay. So these are empty boxes, as you can see, because all these bulbs were brand new, number one, and they've run, this is just a light empty box, I plugged them in and let them run for 24 hours. Now, I don't think that that's a big deal to do. Some people say burn in your bulbs. I want to do this in fairness to this video. That way, some bulbs, sometimes, when you plug them in and they are brand new first time, they emit a high amount of UVB. And then they kind of settle in. So some people will do the burn-in type. I don't normally do that because, like, for this test, I'll tell you, there's like a, let me pull this up. There's a Zoomed lamp stand. So in my tanks, if I can move the bulb up and down, when I first put in, and if it's a new bulb, I'll just measure it, and if it's too high, I can move it up and I can move it down. But for this instance, I wanted everything to be on an equal playing field. I wanted all bulbs to be broken in and ready to go. The other thing is, when I do the test, I'm going to turn the bulbs on, and I'm going to let the bulbs fully heat up, and I'll actually show you clips of that, because most of them, you'll notice that the UV is going to be different, especially on your fluorescent lamps. The UV is going to be very low right away, and then that bulb's going to kind of power up, fully heat up, and then it's going to output the normal UV. And we're also going to show you some bulbs not in an enclosure. Like, what if you just put it in an empty socket with no dome? So that's what this video is going to be. And it's going to be a pretty basic setup. Like I said, there's a lamp holder. We've got two braces here. So this is where we'll put the screen across. And then this will sit there. And this will simulate your 8 to 12 inches of normally how high you'd want your bulb to be. But if we have to move that bulb up, we can just, with the screen mesh still here, we can just raise the lamp enclosure up, which will be good. And then we could also remove the screen mesh and really bring it down as well. You know, that piece can get to right about here, which means the dome will be hanging inside here. So that's going to be good. Yay. Now look, we're almost 9 minutes in. I haven't even done one test, but I had to show you guys the setup. But, so I guess let's go first. We're going to tackle the, I'm going to set up with the tight screen, all the bulbs. So I'm going to cut the video here, set everything up so it's ready to test, and then just start showing you some meters and talk about what she said and why I think it was wrong, etc. Okay? Okay. Okay, so the first test that we're going to actually do is I'm going to use a compact fluorescent. You don't have to worry about the tropical or the desert. We're going to look at the power. So this is a 5.0. It's a 26 watt bulb. And I'm going to tackle the first thing that I want to hit from her is she said, don't use CFLs because Because why? Because she said that for some reason, and I don't know where this statistic came from, but the UVB that is emitted from your CFL bulb only broadcasts up to 2 inches from the bottom of the bulb. I have no idea where that's from. On the back of a lot of UV bulbs, they'll actually give you a rough estimate, again, depending on, there's a lot of variables, but they'll give you a rough estimate on, this is the bulb at this distance, this is how much UVA, this is how much UVB comes out. So this tells you at 4 inches away, like, it's a massive amount of UVB, which would be too close. That would, like, burn everything. So we're going to tackle that one first. And this is just in the 5.5-inch mini dome. It's resting right on top of the screen. And I'm going to turn it on, and I'm going to turn the reptile meter on right away, because I'm going to show you with the CFL how the bulb like heats up, which is a good thing. So let me get down into position. Let me turn the bulb on. Then let me instantly press the UV meter. So right now we're getting like 0.1, 0.2, which is a super low amount. But if you notice too, there is very little light that was added to the shot. In fact, if I kill, maybe this is a good opportunity to kill my outside lights. I can't kill the daylight very well in this room, but this area is still very dark because this bulb just turned on, it's cold. And if you remember when they first went to these CFL, these energy saving bulbs as they called them, remember when you would put them in your lamps and everything and you turn them on and they took a while to get up to full, light brightness. And then later they came on with the better ones that said instant on, and you got instant brightness. So I'm going to leave this bulb in here, and it takes a CFL, I would say normally it takes about 1 to 2 minutes to start pushing everything out. So I'm just going to cut the video. It's going to stay right here. I'm not going to move anything. And then I'm going to turn it back on, and I'm going to show you how much UV is being outputted through the fine screen mesh. So this is heavy diffusing mesh. Okay, so here we go. It's been about 2.5, just under 2.5 minutes. So if you look, first of all, before I turn the UV meter on, you're going to notice that the setup is much more bright in there, right? So this thing's putting out a lot more light. Okay, great. So again, like I talked about, there's kind of a time where this is on, and then it kind of is whoosh, and it gets significantly brighter. You even hear a little click, in the glass. That's it's fully temperaturized. And you hear this, people, if you guys used to have fluorescent lighting in a basement and stuff like that, you would always hear kind of the click, 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 and that's how you knew. So let's go to the UV meter. I have not touched this yet. Everything is exactly how it was. Remember before we were getting 0.1 to maybe 0.2? I would guess, based off of what I've done before, that this meter at a distance of so from the table up to where the glass sits is 14 inches, guys. And then and then you subtract this height from it. And so I want to simulate a reptile that's on the ground. So this thing is about 4 inches. So that's a 10-inch gap, which is pretty good, like I said. So everything will sit here. Everything when it's resting on the tank like this will be 10 inches. But there are times where your reptile will move up, and I'll show you that too. But so let's see what UV we're getting from this. I'm going to guess it's about 10 times more. This is a heavily diffused screen. So I'm going to say this is about 1 or just over 1. Yeah, okay, 1.1. Wow, I was almost right there. So we get 1.1. So that's a significant amount more than when it first turned on and it needed to, do its warm-up. But the other thing to think about is, let's say you were making a basking spot for an arboreal animal. So you're going to it's going to be on a hammock, so maybe it's going to be up. Maybe it's going to be a 4-inch difference, you know, so we'll move this up a little bit. So if it was 1.0 here, notice how I'm barely moving it. I lifted it an inch maybe. We're at 1.3, 1.5, 2. So you do get a significant amount of UV penetration through this super fine screen. And right now we're about 6 inches from that, and we're getting 3.5. That's a lot of UV for a lot of reptiles, like, you know, your bearded dragon and stuff like that. That's where you're at. When you start to get to need higher UV, you're getting into your more specialty reptiles. So right away, the UV only goes 2 inches away. That's just a myth about CFLs. That's just blown out of the water. But then the other thing was, well, with a CFL bulb, the UV is only straight down. So I purposely chose this 5.5-inch dome because it has the smallest opening to fit this type of bulb. But you can see this whole area is lit up. We're getting light on the back wall and things like that. So if we take this UV meter and we move it back here, let's pretend maybe there was a hammock or something in the back, and we turn it on. Guess what? We get 0.9 when I angle it towards there. I'm going to try to pick it up real quick. Hopefully the camera can see it. Even with the meter not pointed at the directly straight towards the bulb, we're getting 0.6. So that whole myth of the UV is only straight down and nowhere else, lie, incorrect information. It definitely is a little bit stronger right at the source, but that's just like think about a tube bulb. The closer you would get to the fluorescent tube, the more UV would be out, you know, being emitted. If you just look at your hand, watch the brightness on the back of my hand as I get closer, right? Because I'm getting closer to the source. So that's just wrong. It's just wrong. It's just wrong. It's just wrong. Wrong information. Now I'm going to move this, and because remember, this is your heavily diffused screen, and a lot of tanks actually use a bigger opening in the top metal mesh. So that means more UV penetration, and that's actually why they've kind of moved to the bigger openings. So let's look at the bigger one. Okay, so now we have same exact setup, except it's the bigger opening. I put this one on upside down, the opening, because there's actually this lip here, and I didn't want the bulb to sit up, you know, an extra inch. So no different in terms of the diffusing. So what do we notice right away? It's a little brighter inside. But not much, but a little brighter. Again, lumens don't mean amount of UVB penetration. Do we think in this case that it's going to be more UV coming through? If I had to guess, I'd say probably not. But let's take a peek. Yeah, so we're right about the same thing. We're bouncing at 1. We get a little bit better penetration in terms of off angle, which that would make sense. But straight on that one was giving you like your maximum UV. Now what we might see as we go up, perhaps we'll see a faster increase. Not really. Let's go to that same about 4 inches away. And it's just a little bit more. So, God, as I drop the meter. So that didn't change too much in this type of opening. And I didn't expect it would, because this is not, you know, a super high-powered bulb. Now, what about if we remove the opening? Let's do that. Okay, so now we have no diffusion taking place. We have the bulb at the same height. Are we going to get more UV? Does it look brighter? It is a little brighter. But does that mean more UVB at this distance? Yes, look at that. It's almost double. God, hopefully you guys can see. 0.19, 0.2 I get. That's a ton more. So, right, doesn't that kind of go without saying? When you don't have any diffusion, it would be brighter, like more UV. So, let's move away from this area, even over here at 1.0 pointing straight up. And if we angle it towards there, like, you know, think about your lizard, it's going to absorb UV from all over. We get 1.5, 1.6. So, okay, so what's the confusion about the CFL bulb? Well, I'm not sure where the only 2 inches from that came from. Wrong. There used to be the old design of CFL bulbs. They were very powerful with their UVB output, and they would damage your reptile's eyes. They would basically give them a sunburn. And you'd even see it on the skin, actually. There'd be too much UVB. So that's drastically changed. They're much, much better designed. In my opinion, in a lot of cases, they're actually better than fluorescent tubes. Why, you may ask, since almost everyone uses fluorescent tubes. We're going to go to a tube light now, and I'm going to show you why. And just for proof of what's in here, this fluorescent tube, I may have to turn the light on for this, come down, is a Zoomed. It's an 18-inch bulb. It's a Reptile, and it's 10.0. So this is a T8, but this is the higher output of a T8 bulb. Okay, we're on the fine mesh screen first. Like I said, that's a brand new bulb that's only been burned in for 24 hours. We're going to go ahead and turn it on. And if you can look, drastically different type of light. It's much cooler, but not anywhere near as bright. I'm going to move this back so it's right under. We're going to turn this on, and we're getting 0.6, 0.4, 0.5. We'll call it 0.5. Right away on the on, we're getting 0.5. Let's let this one have a couple of minutes, and then we're going to show you what it gets to. Okay, so we've given it the same amount of time to heat up here, about 2.5 minutes. Let's see what type of result that we get. Remember, we had about 0.5. From 0.4 to 0.6 fluctuates, so we're going to call it 0.5 when it first turned on brand new. For the test, brand new for the test. Here we go. And we're getting 0.6. Okay, so it's not really increased at all. And we're at from the same height. So remember, from this height, we were sitting at about 1.1 with that compact fluorescent in that mini dome. Now, I will say, in this fixture, and I want to show you guys, so this has a reflector. It's in there. This fixture actually, you guys might be familiar, used to have like even a waterproof piece of plastic that would cover it to help keep, water out if you were using this. I've removed that because I want, just the most UV to penetrate through this. So that's not on there, as you can see. So here's the other myth, right? Well, again, in Lizardguru's video, when she was talking about, hey, a CFL, it just puts the UV here, and look, the other side of the tank is so dark, and there's not, I want UV everywhere, and if your reptile wants to hide from UV, they can go in a hide. That's horrible information. Because a lot of reptiles, bearded dragons, Chinese water dragons, tegus, chameleons, but chameleons are a little bit different because their tank is vertical. But do you want your reptile to go into a hide when it just wants to chill from the UV? No, you don't. Like, you want it to go into the hide when it just wants shelter and wants to, feel safe. Otherwise, I still want my reptile to be out on display, looking at me. I'm looking with it. Maybe I'm petting it when it still is out of the UV. So I don't want the whole tank to have high UV. I want a UV gradient just like I want a heat gradient. Is there damage to having it go in its hide to avoid UV? No, except that then it's in its hide. Instead of out on a rock looking at you and you're looking at it and you're talking to it, or maybe you walk by and you pet it or you wave to it, right? That's the negative. People don't like when their reptiles are in the hide because you can't interact with them. So let's take this and let's move this to the corner, and let's turn it on and show what type of UV we're going to get. Because remember, there's light back there, and there's the misconception. Because there's light, there's UV, and we're getting 0.2. If we aim it, we're getting 0.3. 0.3, 0.3. It's settling on 0.3. That's nothing. I don't know off the top of my head. I could look it up, but I don't know off the top of my head a reptile that needs just 0.3. And the bulb being longer, guys, people are going to say, well, that's only an 18-inch one. Yeah, but I'm just scaling inside of this range. That's why I have this in a smaller range. A longer bulb is not going to emit more powerful UV. It's just going to increase the coverage of that UV. So that is this. Look at, we're still at 0.6 now. That is this T8 on the high mesh. Now let's go to an open mesh one. All right, so same thing like the CFL, open mesh screen on upside down. That way the bulb sits at the same height. We will adjust this so it's directly under the UV, the strongest part. The strongest part. Here we go. And 0.7. Fluctuating back down to 0.6. Let's call it 0.7. It blipped on 0.8 for a little bit, but really it's all on 7. So did it get stronger? I don't know. Now we're actually going to simulate this inside the tank next, and I'm going to do that by cheating the sides in a little bit. That way I can rest the reflector on the sides, because she says in that video, hey, you can put T8s inside the tank, but T5s you have to keep outside the tank. No explanation, and again, not accurate. But here we go. So what I did is I cheated the one in on the right, because the one on the left is holding the stand, and I didn't want to move that. So look, it's uninterrupted. So now we have maximum. So this is, we're pretending that this T8 bulb is inside the tank. And for reference, I have a T8 bulb that's inside the tank. And I also have T5 high outputs inside tanks. Let's look at this T8 though, if it was inside the tank. 1.1. Where did we see that number before? Did we see that number with a CFL that was being maximum diffused by the tightest grate that we have? But I thought CFLs didn't give off UV. See? It's bad information. We'll take this to the back, and we'll turn it on back here, and we get 0.4, 0.5, aim at 0.6. So this T8, under maximum performance, we'll even raise this up, and I think maybe this is important. We are about that magical 2-inch gap away from the light, and now we're getting 5. That magical 2-inch area. Why? Well, I'll just talk about it, guys. I hate fluorescent light tubes because they give off really little UVB. And people are not giving their reptiles good UVB. I mean, this is a perfect example. Now, yes, if this was inside, or wait, maybe if this was a T5 high output inside, you would get it good. But if you don't have a tester, you can't say anything. You can't say, oh, you need a different bulb. You don't know. So we've tested this. Let us look at my preferred type of bulb, the Mercury vapor bulb. Here we go. So we have that 8.5-inch dome, some 100-watt Mercury vapor bulb in there, sun glow. We're just going to put this here, and I'm actually not going to do all the Mercury vapor bulbs in this video because it's getting on so long, but there are different wattages of Mercury vapor bulbs. There's also different kinds from clear to frosted, and they all do produce more heat or more UV. But what's nice about a Mercury vapor bulb, which is one of my favorite bulbs, heat, UVA, and UVB in one bulb. On camera, if you guys haven't seen this before, and I try to do color correction, Mercury vapor bulbs are specifically for like these reptiles, guys. They do not output the entire color spectrum. Our eyes, our brains do the color correction for us. Camera lenses will see it as green light because there's no magenta hue coming out of a Mercury vapor bulb. So also when you turn these on, they're kind of a warm glow of color, and then they get to like a brighter white, and then our eyes do the correction. So we're going to turn on the vapor bulb. See, this is your soft white. We're going to turn this on right away, and we're getting 0 or 0.1. Same thing, there's kind of a charge up time. And Mercury vapor bulbs are self-ballast, guys. So they do have a heat sensor in them. So if the bulb is getting too hot, it will shut off. And sometimes, like I've blown a fuse before, and you guys should know this about vapor bulbs, they do not auto turn on. So even if you shut them off yourself or you unplugged them once they were at maximum heat, they need to cool off a little bit before the bulb will turn back on. That's all normal, and that's okay. But again, these are normally not your kidder bulbs. These can output a ton of heat and a ton of UVB. So you got to know what reptile you're using this for. But there are weaker mercury vapor bulbs, you know, I think in the 70 watt range, I think, but they go all the way up to like 200, 250, I think even a 300, that's a lot of heat coming out of that guy. So notice, color's getting a little bit brighter. We're going to let this, I'm going to test it now, and then we're going to test it in that 2.5 minutes. So now it's already, look at that, it's already at 6.0. Ooh, and it's getting warm under here. All right, let's come back in 2.5 minutes. All right, so we're back after about 2.5 minutes, and before I turn this on, I just want to talk about the CFL and the tube light. Think about all these YouTubers you see who have these like awesome enclosures, walk-in enclosures, big enclosures, you know, 6 feet, 8 feet, and they got screen tops on them, and then they got a tube, even if it's a T5 high output fluorescent light, and they've got that 4 feet plus away from the reptile. That light is penetrating. How much UV do you think those reptiles are getting? I mean, I see some awesome looking enclosures, and the UV bulb is a joke, and I know it's a joke, and you spent all this money on an enclosure and lighting, and you don't even test it. Your reptile's not getting any UV. Not that far away. When we had a 10.0 high output bulb 10 inches away, uncovered, giving one Ferguson UV index. So what happens when you've got a monitor or a specialty animal that needs 5, 6, 7? No way that thing's doing it. Your T5 high output's not doing it, and we'll show you that. It's coming, because I want to show you some real in-tank footage. But so this has been running. It's got its full brightness. The bulb's heating up. I'll tell you, it's nice and warm under here. Let's go ahead and press this. If I was a reptile that, you know, a baby monitor or something, and I needed a 100-degree heat spot, and I needed to get to, you know, 6 or 7 UV index, this is the way to get it. Black throat monitor or something like that. Asian water monitor. This is where I'm looking for. And we're going to get, 6.5. Amazing. And again, this is a dome, but remember, this is an 8.5-inch dome, so that opening is much bigger. So that's why you can also see it's much brighter. But there's also 100 watts compared to 26 watts. But let's move to the back. I've been using this, by the way, this little rubber foot as a reference point when I come back here. So if we first do it facing straight up, we get 1.3. And if we tip it forward towards the mercury vapor bulb, like an actual reptile, and you should tip it if you're testing where your reptile will be, we get 2.1. Let's see if I can show it again. Hopefully you guys see that on the camera. 2. Oh, isn't that amazing? So let's change the top now. And just for reference, before we go, come underneath, about 6.5. So here we are on the wider mesh. Let's see what we get. Oh, and also, guys, functioning though of a mercury vapor bulb, these things have to be straight up and down. They cannot be at an angle like you can with other bulbs. So it's just bad for the bulb. Here we go. Wider mesh. We were at 6.5. Now we're at 7.2. Again, this is great. So let's go to no mesh. All right, I had to fiddle with the light stand because this dome is bigger to make it hang, but it's just about equal within a millimeter or two. It's much brighter down here. There's a lot of heat coming down. This is going to be a huge amount of UVB, and you're never going to get tube light to do this. Let's see what we get. Oh yeah, 12. 12.6, 12.7. Now that's a massive amount. And I don't even know what would need that high. A tortoise maybe. But what would we do in this case? Because let's say we had an animal that needed 6, but you didn't have a top to the dome. Well, what if you just took this bulb and you raise it up? Let's come underneath the middle. The middle shifted a little bit because I want it to be fair. And we get 3.5. So you can get low amounts of UVB and still get a lot of heat from a mercury vapor bulb, which is great. Okay, we're going to cut this bulb. And then the last thing I want to show is the double dome. Okay, so the double dome is heating up. I'm just using the left side, that's where the bulb is, so don't worry when I test it, I'll make sure we scoot the UV meter over. I gotta tell you, I normally hate the double dome. Why is that? Well, one is, almost every time I see a double dome, it's the small kind, which also normally has this this compact fluorescent in it. You've seen it in videos before. This is crap. You need the coiled one, number one. So let me get rid of this. And this is a Reptile 10.0. I've tested these before. They're garbage. So we're not going to look into it. But the reason is because you normally have the smaller double dome, which means you've got a small light in there for heat or a small one for UVB, but it just cuts the life of your compact fluorescent. Being that close to a heat source, especially if you put a ceramic heat emitter in there, it just cuts the life of it. It's a little bit better with the large size double dome, which I do use that one on Bruticus's enclosure, but when you don't have the double dome and you have individual domes, just from a logistical standpoint, guys, you're able to spread the dome locations out, which is really cool, and I think it's much better. Because the double dome still takes 2 power cords. I mean, sometimes if you had to put 2 ceramic heat emitters in them and blast in some heat at a targeted location, then you can get away with a good thing. But I see people pair it with 1 heat bulb, 1 UV bulb, and I don't like that because it kills that CFL. But you do get a little bit wider arch of light coverage because the opening is now extended, right? So this would be a 5.5-inch double dome, whereas before I just used the normal 5.5-inch. So if we test this bulb, this is the same bulb we tested in the normal 5.5-inch. So right away we're going to get a 1.4, and if we move. Now, when we come over here, remember in the double dome, the CFL is on the left side, so it's just a void. But I did there's a light bulb in there on the right, just like what would be a heat bulb, to simulate something being in that spot. It's just not on. But you wouldn't use a double dome and only put one thing in it and leave the other side open. So I wanted to simulate something in there to break up the light. So if we use it at this rubber foot location on here, we get our 0.5. And we get our about 1, and again underneath we get our 1.5. So that bulb performs the exact same as it would in a just individual dome. So separate them out and don't kill the life of your bulb. Unless for some reason, let's say you needed more, so you put in 2 CFLs into this dome or 2 heaters. But again, you could just do 2 individual domes right next to each other. I don't get it. Let's let it heat up all the way though for the 2 minutes and see if that changes. Alright, we've got our 2.5 minutes. It's been a little bit brighter, and I'm only going to do the double dome, guys, on this fine mesh. So if we go to use it, okay, about 1.4, 1.5, that's probably where we'll sit. So remember, guys, this is more than a T8 bulb that was inside the enclosure. T8 10.0, but let's go look at a couple real-world examples that I use in my tank. We're going to bring our meter with us. We're going mobile. So the first shot, which I've talked about before, is for the turtle enclosure. That's Mercury vapor bulb. It gives perfect coverage all over the platform. If we come in here, we test our UV, it's going to give us about 4 UV at where Big Bertha would be, but also it's giving us the heat that we need. And that is on the same type of lamp enclosure. So as winter comes and the house is a little bit cooler, I just raise or lower that to control the heat in the basking area. Here we are again at Blackthroat Monitor number 2's enclosure. We've been spending a lot of time here lately, and this is the last part of this video. And there's a reason why we're here, because this enclosure has, on the inside of it, remember this wasn't allowed, a T5 high output 10.0 UVB tube, 2-foot length, and a 26 watt 10.0 high output CFL UVB bulb with no dome. Bump, bump, bum. The plot thickens, right? Well, it's all done on purpose, guys, in trying to make the most natural enclosure, which is why we're here. So there's a reason. This is a 4-foot enclosure. I don't have a 3-foot tube. I don't have a 4-foot tube because I don't want UV everywhere. Look how dark it is over here. I want you to be able to escape in there, but I also want you to be able to escape up there. I want you to be able to escape up there and stay away from the UV. I want you to be able to escape under there or under there, but not have to just go in there. Or you could go in the water. But also, I want to get the right amount of UVB coverage and gradient. So I do want the left side of the tank to be high UVB. And I do want the left side of the tank to be high heat. We got a 100-watt ceramic heat emitter in there, just blasting down onto that cement block. But here we are with our trusted Ferguson UV index solar meter. So we can talk about this. And what we can do actually is I can shut each one off individually. And since they've had full burn-up time, they've been on all morning. So they're going to be at full, full heat, full UV output, and then they're instant turned on. So there's no risk in shutting them off and turning them right back on. But first I'm going to show you them with them both on, and this is what's really important. So that rock spot there, this is the high spot. We'll get to that. But we do want to make sure there's UV in other spots. So right here in the opening of the tank, and we'll point the solar meter always towards the UV source, we're going to see 1.7. Where have we seen these numbers before, right? Aren't these interesting numbers? Because didn't we see these numbers with just one compact fluorescent in a dome over the spot? And now we're way over here and we barely have any UV over here. And if we go over here to this spot, again, let's point this towards where the light's coming from. 0.9, so we know if we went further away, 0.7, 0.6, 0.2, essentially 0, right? Especially if you get in the shadow there. So, wait, why can't I put a T5 high output bulb inside the tank? This is 10.0 high output. What would it do wrong? Well, let's go. The T5's right here with its reflectors. It's right up here. So you got these things. So let's go to the actual basking spot location, which is right here on the corner, right? And let's see what type of let's pretend that this is the black throat and he's laying on here, and let's see what we get. We get 2, 2.9, 3.0. This has a good amount of UV. But let us take it a step further and go directly now to this basking spot. Here's our black throat. He's stretched out on here. We're going to test this 2.7. If we come to the edge, 3, 3.5. What if we climbed up on this rock? 3.4, 4.5. Good amount of UV. Is any of it coming from that T5 high output bulb with reflector? As we get closer and closer and closer and closer to it? Don't know. Let's find out. So let's do that test. So I have shut off the 10.0 full-size CFL. And we just have on the ZoomEd T5 HO for high output 10.0 bulb. First thing you're going to notice is the tank is a lot darker than it was before, but it's not pitch black by any means, okay? And I'm gonna move this a little bit quickly because I don't want that bulb to cool off too much. But it's not as bright. It's not as bright as it would be. If we test the T5, it's right up here. You saw it before. You can see it kind of right now. If we test it from a close-up source, but I want this to be able to be read, I'm gonna be right at it. We're gonna be at 3.5. But look, we're that magical 2 inches away. 4 as we get right under it. So what if we were just at the basking spot with this? This is, I don't know, maybe this tank is 2 feet up. This is about 5 inches up. So maybe 18-ish inches away from the light, which that's very common distance in a tank. I see these mounted at the top of a 2-foot bearded dragon enclosure. And again, a lot of times they're being diffused by the screen. So let's test this here. 0.4, 0.3. That's all it's doing. I knew that's all it was doing, guys, because I just, spoiler alert, fluorescent tube lights at massive distances give off really little UV, like once you break a foot to a 1.5 foot distance. Let's turn it off, though, and turn the CFL on. Okay, so we've just reversed the roles. CFL on. T5, high output off. You can tell that warm light is back in here, the soft white from the CFL. It was off for, I don't know, a minute, but it's probably not going to be outputting the full UVB right away, but that's okay. Let's test it from the front, where we tested the high output bulb. In all fairness, the high output bulb, we pointed this directly at it, so we're going to point this at that. And remember, we were getting our 0.5 and everything. Let's see what we get at this distance. 1.5. But remember, we were told they don't give enough UV, only directly under it. But here we are at 1.5, and we're not directly under it. It sits right here. You know, it sits almost 1.5 inches away. But let's go directly under it and let's turn it on. And 2.6, 2.7. It's going to probably get up to 3 where it was here. If we come up here, God, it's hot in there. 4.1. If we take the back corner, 1.0. If we come way on the side here, we're way over here on the side now, 1.5. I mean, we're what about on this log he's climbing? 1.5. So that's giving off enough UV to the whole tank, but it's centralizing a lot here.